Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in this video, I want to discuss one of the most controversial characters in all of Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. In the Game of Thrones fandom, there are some people who absolutely love Rhaegar Targaryen. They think he is a true hero and that his relationship with Lyanna Stark was a love story for the ages. Then there are other people who absolutely hate his guts, think that he took advantage of Lyanna in order to have a baby, that he abandoned Elia Martell, etc. Truthfully, I think neither of these interpretations are 100% correct. I think in Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, the characters are very complex and morally gray. All of the characters have both good and bad qualities. No one is pure good or pure evil. I think Rhaegar is no exception to this rule. So in this video today, I want to talk about this infamous man's life, his death, and his good and bad qualities. As you probably know, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen was the firstborn child of Aerys, the Mad King, and his sister wife, Queen Rhaella. He was born at the Palace of Summerhall the same night as a great fire which came to be known as the Tragedy of Summerhall. Though many people spoke highly of Prince Rhaegar and his character, including Jorah Mormont and Barristan Selmy, Barristan also says that Rhaegar was a very melancholic person, that he believes the Tragedy of Summerhall hung over him for all of his days. In A Storm of Swords, he says to Daenerys about Rhaegar, "I am not certain it was in Rhaegar to be happy. There was a melancholy to Prince Rhaegar, a sense of doom. He was born in grief, my queen, and that shadow hung over him all his days." While Rhaegar was said to be very melancholic and brooding, sounds like a certain Stark Targaryen you probably know, he did have many other positive qualities that people look back on fondly. As a child, Rhaegar actually took very little interest in fighting and other typical masculine activities, and he preferred books. He loved to read and study. However, one day he read something in a book that made him decide he needed to pick up a sword and learn how to become a warrior. Rhaegar found the Azor Ahai prophecy and believed the prophecy referred to him, which is why he took a certain interest in learning sword fighting. However, even though Rhaegar did become a skilled warrior, he never really enjoyed it. Rhaegar would often return to the smoldering site of Summerhall and play sad songs among the ruins, which were said to reduce women to tears at the sound of them. However, on the flip side, Barristan Selmy also said that Prince Rhaegar used to like to disguise himself and go down into Flea Bottom so that he could sing to the small folk simply because he enjoyed it and wanted to make them happy. Prince Rhaegar was very beloved by the small folk while he was Prince of Dragonstone. At Attorney, Cersei Lannister remembers that though the people cheered more for her father Tywin than they did for the Mad King, they cheered twice as much for Rhaegar as they did for Tywin. As you probably know, the Targaryens had a history of marrying brother to sister. However, Rhaegar had no sister who he could marry when he came of age. Viserys Targaryen later uses this to blame Daenerys for Robert's rebellion, saying that if she had been born earlier, none of this would have happened, which is totally unfair, but it's Viserys. Since Rhaegar had no close female relatives who were of a suitable age for him to marry, he ended up marrying Princess Elia Martell of Dorne. Their marriage seemed to start out okay, and they had a daughter together named Rhaenys. However, Rhaegar's father, the Mad King, did not like his granddaughter Rhaenys because she resembled her Dornish mother Elia, and this is where the rift between Rhaegar and Aerys began. At some point, Rhaegar stopped believing that he himself was Azor Ahai and believed it was his and Elia's second child, their son Aegon, as there was a comet in the sky the night that Aegon was conceived. However, Elia Martell had always had fragile health, and after she gave birth to Prince Aegon, she was advised to not have any more children, as it would probably kill her, and there was no guarantee the baby would survive either. However, Rhaegar was concerned because the prophecy said the dragon needed to have 3 heads and he only had 2 children. In the books, when Daenerys goes into the House of the Undying, she has a vision that I really believe is Rhaegar and Elia, in which Rhaegar discusses this prophecy. After this came the infamous tourney of Harrenhal. At this tourney, Rhaegar won, and when it came time for him to crown his Queen of Love and Beauty, he chose Lyanna Stark over his wife, Elia. Now, some people who don't like Rhaegar said they think this was the moment where Rhaegar singled Lyanna out and decided that he was going to use her to have another child. I don't think that happened at this moment. I don't think that Rhaegar had selfish motives when he crowned Lyanna. Yes, it was embarrassing to Elia since her husband had just passed her over, but I think the reason that Rhaegar chose to crown Lyanna was because he knew she was the Knight of the Laughing Tree. In case you are a show-only watcher who does not know the story of the Knight of the Laughing Tree, I will explain. Meera tells this story to Bran Stark in the A Song of Ice and Fire book series. At the tourney of Harrenhal, a Crannog man implied to be Meera's father, Howland Reed, was antagonized by several squires. It was Lyanna Stark who came to Howland's aid and defended him, then introducing him to her brothers Brandon, Eddard, and Benjen, which is how Howland Reed and Ned Stark ended up becoming friends. The next day of the tourney, a mystery knight entered the competition. This mystery knight was wearing mismatched armor and became known as the Knight of the Laughing Tree due to the laughing werewood face on the knight's breastplate. The squires that had been tormenting Howland Reed served House Hay, House Blount, and House Frey, and the mysterious Knight of the Laughing Tree challenged the knights from each of these houses in the lists, defeating them all. The small folk began to cheer for the Knight of the Laughing Tree and root for this mystery knight. However, Rhaegar Targaryen, who was already beginning to descend into madness and paranoia, thought that the Knight of the Laughing Tree was a traitor sent to destroy him and decided that he wanted the Knight of the Laughing Tree's head. When the knight did not reappear the next day, Aerys sent his men out to find this Knight of the Laughing Tree and unmask him, including his son Rhaegar. However, they all searched and came back empty-handed, finding only the Knight of the Laughing Tree's discarded shield. A very popular theory is that this Knight of the Laughing Tree was actually Lyanna, and that when Rhaegar went out to look for the Knight of the Laughing Tree, he actually did find her, but to spare her punishment from his father, he lied and said that he did not know who the Knight of the Laughing Tree was. I think that this is a good theory, and that if it were true, Rhaegar may have crowned Lyanna Queen of Love and Beauty as a recognition for her bravery. So I don't think that Rhaegar singled Lyanna out at the tourney with the intention of getting a child from her. I think he did this to honor her bravery, which no one would know about except for him. And at some point after this, they developed feelings for one another. Some people take issue with the fact that Lyanna was so young at this tourney, and she was only 16 years old when she died giving birth to Jon, whereas Rhaegar was several years older. And while in a modern world that is creepy because she is under the modern age of consent, I don't think I can really fault Rhaegar for that because he lived in a world where this would have been totally acceptable. In fact, it would have been normal. Another problem that people have with Rhaegar is that he and Lyanna ran off together, yet they never told anyone that she had gone willingly, even after the Mad King murdered Lyanna's father and her brother Brandon. Also, people take issue with the fact that Rhaegar did lead the Targaryen army into battle instead of turning against his father who had done these horrible things. I actually have a theory that Rhaegar and Lyanna did try to tell people they were going off together willingly. However, Littlefinger, who would have been at Riverrun where Lyanna was at the time of her abduction, may have intercepted the note. I have a whole theory on that. I apologize for the bad quality of the video. It was filmed on my laptop at night, but if you want to hear more about that theory, the link is in the description. As for Rhaegar fighting for Aerys, we know that Rhaegar did oppose his father at this point. He did not agree with his father's actions. However, if I am right that Littlefinger intercepted a note from Lyanna explaining what had happened, then Rhaegar would have thought that Robert knew the truth and was making up a lie, calling him a kidnapper and a rapist. Why would he want to align himself with Robert if he thought Robert knew the truth and was still making up lies? Also, even if Rhaegar had tried to team up with Robert against the Mad King, we can't guarantee that Robert would have even agreed or even heard him out. Robert had a deep hatred for Targaryens. We know that he hated all of them because he told Ned that he wasn't bothered by Rhaenys and Aegon's murders since they were Dragonspawn. Even if Rhaegar had gone to Robert and said he wanted to form an alliance, would Robert have heard him out? Would Robert have even considered joining forces with Rhaegar? Even if Rhaegar had tried to team up against Aerys, there is no guarantee that it would have been successful or turned out any better for anyone. By the end of Robert's rebellion, I don't know what state Rhaegar and Lyanna's relationship was in. Lyanna was left alone in the Tower of Joy, pregnant with only the King's Guard. She probably did not see Rhaegar for a really long time, and we don't know if she had heard about her father and brother's murders at that point. It is possible that she was not very happy at the time of her death. However, I do believe that at some point Rhaegar and Lyanna did really love each other. Daenerys has another vision in the books in the House of the Undying in which she sees a man implied to be Rhaegar whisper a woman's name as he dies, and I really believe that this was Lyanna's name that Rhaegar spoke as his last word before his death. This, in my opinion, shows he did love and care about her and viewed her as more than a baby-making machine. Also, I think the fact that it was Rhaegar who named the Tower of Joy speaks volumes about how he felt about Lyanna. Rhaegar was said to be a very sad person, Barristan Selmy even saying he doesn't think Rhaegar was capable of happiness, but with Lyanna, he was able to feel some semblance of joy, possibly for the first time in his entire life. However, there is one thing Rhaegar did which was pretty horrible and definitely not the right thing to do, and I can't make any excuses for him in this instance, and that is how he screwed over his wife Elia Martell. Elia Martell was, by all accounts, a kind, gentle, and beautiful woman who was nothing but a faithful wife to Rhaegar. Even though I think Rhaegar had good intentions when he crowned Lyanna Queen of Love and Beauty at the tourney of Harrenhal, this was publicly embarrassing to Elia, and I can only imagine how hurt she must have felt. Also, after Elia gave birth to Aegon, who was then only a newborn and her health was surely still very fragile, Rhaegar left her alone on Dragonstone and went off to run off with Lyanna Stark. I can't imagine how hurt she must have felt knowing that her husband had abandoned her and left her alone with 2 children, nowhere else to turn. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me why Rhaegar would annul his marriage to Elia Martell and thereby delegitimize his 2 children with her. I get he was in love with Lyanna Stark, I get that he wanted to marry her, but I don't know how, well, one, how he could have annulled his marriage to Elia Martell because it had been consummated and even produced 2 children. When you annul your marriage, which is different from a divorce, there has to be a reason why the marriage was invalid, and I can't think of one in Rhaegar's case. Also, if Rhaegar was obsessed with having 3 children for the 3 heads of the dragon prophecy, then why would he delegitimize his first 2 children? That's 2 heads of the dragon right there. I keep hoping that maybe in the books we'll get a more satisfactory explanation. I don't know. Maybe Rhaegar decides he's going to have 2 wives, a la Aegon the Conqueror, or he decides that he's not going to marry Lyanna and he's just going to legitimize his child by her by royal decree. I don't know. No matter which way it goes, this is still really unfair to Elia, who, like I said, has been nothing but a faithful wife to Rhaegar, and it seems like a good mother to her 2 children, and she really just got a raw deal. Now, not only did Rhaegar abandon Elia, annul their marriage, and delegitimize their children, he also, it seems, did not give her enough protection. Rhaegar knew that Aerys did not like Elia that much, and that he was super paranoid and dangerous. However, he didn't do anything to stop Aerys from bringing Elia and her children to King's Landing, where she would not be safe. I don't know if he left Elia with any guards, but clearly it was not enough, since she ended up in King's Landing, where she was murdered by the Mountain and raped. So Rhaegar definitely behaved selfishly and definitely did not have Elia's best interest at heart. I think he was so obsessed with being with Lyanna and putting himself first that he definitely screwed over Elia and was indirectly responsible for her death. So guys, those are my thoughts on Rhaegar Targaryen. While I do not think that Rhaegar is as much a villain as some people make him out to be, and I do think he had positive qualities, I definitely think the way he treated Elia Martell was inexcusable and wrong. Elia is the person here who I have the most sympathy for. I think she was an innocent victim who deserved so much better than what she got. That being said, however, I don't think that Rhaegar used Lyanna just to have a child. I think at some point they did really love each other, even if it did not work out for them in the end. So let me know in the comments your thoughts on Rhaegar Targaryen. Do you like him? Do you dislike him? Do you disagree with anything I said in this video? Let me know. I would really like to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye! I will see you next time.